The Lover's Pentacle, Chapter 9. The the sun. Well, yeah, the sun. As in the sunlight and stuff. She screeched angrily when she saw that he wasn't home, and Carina saw her cousin Rodrigo lounging about in the hammock. "Where is Bruno?" asked Carina, looming over her cousin. "He went over to Kane's house for a bit, and he needed to get the last 2 volumes of that comic he's reading," said Rodrigo. "He will be back soon." "He better be back soon," growled Carina. She sat in the sofa to wait for her man to return, and she eventually got bored of sitting there doing nothing. And she turned on her telenovelas to distract herself, and the hours rolled by with Bruno not returning. And her boyfriend eventually arrived around 9, and he had stayed over to eat real food in Kane's house. And he had ended up binge eating. "Look what the cat dragged in," said Carina, pouting. "I am sorry I was so late," said Bruno, and he bit his lower lip while he struggled with his nausea. "I don't feel well. I'm going to bed." "Let me examine you," said Carina, coming over. "Please don't. Nothing is seriously wrong with me, just a little nausea," said Bruno, downplaying his condition. He went to the bathroom to shower, and the hot water falling on him froze his digestion, and Carina turned off her telenovela when she heard her man emptying his stomach. "Oh, for crying out loud," said Carina, rolling her eyes, and she sprang from her seat to see if she could assist. Ola opened her mouth to speak, but she chose to remain silent. She wanted to see if her daughter could act under pressure. Carina entered the bathroom with a bottle of warm water, and Bruno was still trying to force out what little remained in his stomach. And due to the effort, a few blood vessels around his temple had exploded, giving him a slight red tint. "Bruno, here, drink this," said Carina, and Bruno rinsed his mouth before spitting out the water. "Drink it," ordered Carina with a commanding tone she used with uncooperative patience. Bruno drank it all in one gulp, and instead of feeling better, the warm water finished cleaning out his stomach content, and once all of the fatty food had finally left his body, he felt weirdly better. As much as you want to overindulge, your stomach has gotten used to eating healthy. It is going to continue to punish you like that whenever you overindulge," said Carina. Bruno breathed a sigh of relief before nodding like a good little boy, and he wobbled out of the bathroom to take refuge inside the bed. The following morning, Carina made him an oatmeal, and she also prepared an easy-to-digest lunch banana and ginger ale, crackers, and an egg sandwich. Bruno went to work without so much as giving Carina a kiss. During breakfast, he spent all his time reading his stupid comic, and at this point, Carina felt extremely neglected. She spent her worship extremely distracted, and since it was a slow day, she had plenty of time to think about how to get her boyfriend's attention. She ended up going to the beauty salon. It had been centuries since she had last visited one. She paid to have her hair straightened with a Brazilian keratin treatment, and after 4 hours and 6 keratin bottles, Carina's hair was straight. And with her hair straightened, it felt even longer than her waist, and she had gotten herself a little haircut just to split ends. And while looking at her cell phone, she saw the photo she had taken of the comic. She showed the photo to the stylist before asking the man to give her bangs over her eyes. And once she was satisfied with her new look, she paid for his service. While sitting in the car, she touched up her makeup, and with her liner, she added a beauty mark just under her eye. And she drove back home quickly. She walked triumphantly into her house, and she sat beside Bruno before giving him a peck on the cheek. Bruno, not bothering to look up from his comic, said, "What took you so long? You missed dinner." "I felt like going to the salon," said Carina. "On a Wednesday? Why?" asked Bruno disdainfully. "Look at me when I talk to you," barked Carina, taking away Bruno's book. Bruno opened his mouth to protest, but his words turned into laughter. This was not the reaction that Carina wanted. I'm sorry," said Bruno apologetically, while still half laughing. "This is a horror comic, Carina. That is why I find this story so fascinating. It has nothing to do with the female antagonist, and I can't believe you are jealous of an anime girl, and she isn't even my type." "So I did all this for nothing," said Carina, extremely deflated. And she flipped to the comic book over the top, and it was indeed a horror story, though she had to admit that the antagonist was awfully pretty when she wasn't undergoing mitosis. wouldn't go as far as to say that you did all this for nothing. If your intention was to get my attention, I am more than happy to inform you that you succeeded, said Bruno, standing up to face Carina. And he licked his thumb before rubbing off the beauty mark. Carina pushed her man away before saying, "God, you're such a pig." As a tiny smile appeared on Bruno's face, and whenever that smile manifested, Carina didn't know what to think. "Can I have my book back, please?" said Bruno calmly, extending his hand. Carina felt the urge to rip that comic to pieces, and the only reason why she didn't obey her initial impulse was that the comic belonged to Cain, and she reluctantly returned the comic book to Bruno, and he proceeded to lay down on the couch to read it. This naturally made Carina furious, and she sat beside Bruno before turning on the television, and she raised the volume so high that it was impossible for anyone in the household to ignore the noise. And after flipping to channel, she found La Rosa de Guadalupe. She didn't much particularly care for that show, but she knew that Bruno hated it. And try as he might, the Soviet woman on the television made it impossible for him to focus on his comic. And in the end, he sprung from his seat to go out, and Carina at first thought he was going to Rodrigo's house. Instead, she heard the car turning on, and followed by the sound of Bruno driving away. And this was not how Carina had planned to spend her night. "Mom," said Carina tentatively. "What?" asked Unla, placing her hand behind her ear. Carina lowered the volume, and Unla, laughing, said, "Much better, honestly, Carina. Just when I think you have finally matured, you go and do something extremely childish." "Do you think Bruno went to cheat on me, Mom?" asked Carina. "Why is cheating the first thing that comes to your mind?" asked Unla, bringing out a little notepad, and she wrote gibberish before looking at her daughter's face. "Well, I don't know, Mom. I cannot decide at this point. I almost cheated on Bruno first, and he caught me in the act even, and you know what they say, those who live by the sword must die by the sword," said Carina. "Define almost," asked Unla. "We got as far as third base," said Carina, laughing nervously. "I am going to call him and apologize. Do you think I should call him?" "I don't know enough about Bruno to give you an informed opinion, and maybe your calls flatter his ego, or maybe they annoy him," said guest Unla. "Though whenever that sardonic smile manifests, it means something. The first time I saw it was when you called him Malik while drunk, and the second time I saw it was today when you called him pig. And Rebecca warned you that Bruno suffers from bulimia, and you shouldn't say unflattering things about his physical body. I call him a pig because he's a slob. It wasn't my intention to body shame him, and nobody in his right mind would call that copper Adonis fat," said Carina. "And it is not as if he's bulimic at the moment, and Bruno claimed that it was just a high school phase, and he got over it after going to therapy and getting proper nutrition information. Bruno says a lot of things, though the things that he chooses to keep quiet are the most worrisome," said Unla thoughtfully. She didn't consider Bruno dangerous to her daughter, but she did fancy that he had self-destructive tendencies. And like every psychologist, Unla couldn't help but overanalyze her daughter's boyfriend and his moods. An hour passed, and Carina, finally losing her patience, decided to beg her boyfriend to come home. And she left him a voicemail message. "I am sorry for being such a jerk. Please come home." 10 minutes later, she left him another message. "I didn't mean to call you fat, and when I call you a pig, I meant it in a slobbery sense. I am sorry if I made you feel ugly. Please come home." 5 minutes later, she sent him another message. "Bruno, I'm sorry I didn't let you read your stupid comic in peace. Come home already. I miss you, baby." 1 minute later, she said, "Bruno, I love you. I really do. Please come home." And a minute later, her phone began ringing, and she answered it immediately, and she was delighted to hear Bruno's voice say, "I am coming home soon." "How soon?" asked Carina. "After I finish this match," said Bruno, hanging up. "What a match?" And he hung up, said Carina. After rattling her brain, she remembered that Bruno had become acquainted with a bartender at Space Club, and his name was Carlos Perez, and he was 36 years old, medium build, tall, stoic, hard-working bartender, with expressionless black eyes, raven hair, and a pasty face. And he was good at chess, and this was all that Bruno cared to know about his new playfellow. Carina spent the evening preparing the love nest, and she made a scented bath for her man, and she sprinkled the floor with roses, and she prepared whipped cream and strawberries, and she sat on the bed to wait, and after half an hour she got bored of waiting, and she opened up her dollhouse to play with Nana, and around midnight she awoke to the sound of the front door opening, and she sprang for her bed to go to the living room, and a screech escaped her lips when she realized that the person who had opened the door wasn't Bruno. The intruder fled just as he was fleeing, Bruno pressed down on the accelerator with the intention of running over the intruder, and the intruder turned a corner to flee to the gardens, and Bruno left his car to give Chase some food, and both jumped over the fence, and Bruno hopped through a couple of ground obstacles in the form of garden hoses, toy cars, and other clutter that was common in his neighbor's backyard. And when the intruder tripped, Bruno was certain that he was going to catch him, and the thought that the intruder might have a gun or a knife never crossed his mind. It felt like a game of football. The intruder had the football, and as soon as he tackled that man, he was going to win the game. Closer, just a bit closer, he could almost touch the intruder's shirt. Alas, his knee failed him, and he started to fall, and he would have splattered against the asphalt, but a fragile hand steadied him, and once the intruder was certain that Bruno was no longer in danger, he attempted to flee, and Bruno held on to the fragile hand to keep it from escaping, and Bruno released the hand when he saw the silvery sheen of a Swiss army knife. The intruder ran through the neighborhood until he was lost in the darkness. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Bye-bye, God bless.